Brasiliens börsindex har gått starkare än de flesta andra i augusti. Det kan ha enskilda förklaringar, men Lionel Bernard som förvaltar 2 latinamerikanska fonder tror att marknaden och kontinenten har mer att ge. Lionel, there's a broad conception that lowering interest rates in America is very beneficial for emerging markets in general and for Latin America. Do you agree with this notion?
Yes, in theory it should be. When you cut interest rates in the benchmark country, which is the US, basically you should have an improvement in the interest rate curve of all emerging markets, and that includes Latin America.
You focus on Latin America in 2 funds. I noticed that Brazil, the Bovespa, had a particularly strong performance in August. This might need some context, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, August saw a rally on the Bovespa, basically because I think there was first more insurance that the US would cut rates because of signs of inflation in the economy. And so the second reason is that President Lula has changed his rhetoric, accepting that the central bank probably will going to hike rates again in the short term, so that you will have a reduction in the longer end of the curve. And that's important for markets.
Accepting short-term pain is beneficial for markets, essentially.
Yes, it is.
If we zoom out to the whole year, Brazil has not been an outperformer. It hasn't been as strong. Can you give me some context on that?
Yes, of course. I think there are 2 points here. The first one is that the US economy was much more resilient than anyone would have expected. So it was not good for the interest rate cut narrative. And the second point is that fiscal spending in Brazil has actually, the growth in fiscal spending has exceeded the growth in revenue. So this bad message on the fiscal was also made worse by the fact that President Lula seemed not to care much. So the Brazilian real depreciated, and so did the Bovespa.
What's your outlook for the Brazilian markets going forward?
So going forward, we are a bit more constructive. The reason being that we have a local election in October. We just had the budget released for next year, and the targets are okay, but we know there is probably some overestimation of GDP for next year. But at least the fact that the detail will be released after the local election probably means that the government will accept some kind of spending freeze.
When you invest in Brazil, and I understand that Brazil is your favorite market in Latin America at the moment, does that automatically come with a big exposure to energy? Could you talk a little bit about what sectors you like to invest in?
No, it's not specifically driven by energy. Actually, energy in the short term could suffer from a global deceleration, including the US, including Europe. So we are not specifically positive on energy, but it doesn't matter much for Brazil or Latin America. Brazil is a net exporter of energy, but it's not the only source of income.
Any other sectors you would like to highlight that you like to invest in Brazil?
Yes, in Brazil today there are sectors that we like. First, we like stories linked to dividend yield. We also like self-help stories, which is kind of obvious, but we also like discretionary consumption at this point.
And finally, how is the Brazilian consumer doing?
Well, currently the Brazilian consumer is doing well. We have seen wage increases in real terms, although it is this growth is now decelerating. And also Brazilians have benefited from social stipends.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome.